Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing Psylocke and we're going to be talking about posing, which is one of those things we talk about an awful lot. We're also going to have some effects to do here and a little bit of design talk, I suppose. That'll also be something that I'll be doing here as well. So yeah, there's going to be some adjustments that I have to make to this because yeah, there's some minor things which I'll have to change. I'm just noticing now as I look down at this. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll have to think about that in a little bit. So, yeah. Realistically speaking, there isn't a huge amount of design stuff we're doing. I'm using some elements of a few different designs, but you'll obviously see that whenever I show it to you, which, you know, might as well just be now. So yeah, I'll roll the intro and then I'll show you what I've got. So yeah. Okay, so this is what we've got. So a few things will obviously come to your attention, such as the hair. Typically, Psylocke has like, is it like a tied, like a low ponytail that she would normally have, or is it normally? Well, yeah, I suppose just as often it's untied hair, which is just really mostly over on the one side is normally what it is. So yeah, I've gone for the, I've used her hairstyle from Ultimate Alliance 3, from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and so a couple of the design elements here I've taken from that. Now I do this a lot because I like a lot of elements of the design from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, but I think some of the design elements are just a little bit much. Sometimes they do have a habit of over designing things a little bit. So I've used some elements and then trimmed certain things out. So for example, I kept the bodysuit mostly fairly simple, and then I kept the gloves and boots to have the sort of double stripe thing. I'm not really sure what those are. There's probably a name for them. I don't know what they actually are. The double stripe bits. I kept those in, and then I just made the bodysuit fairly simple. I just added these little lines down the side so that there's still a little bit of something going on. And yeah, so let me go in here and talk about a few other elements. So obviously I decided to include the sort of side blade. Would that be what I'd call it? Would that be what you'd call it, I think? And then obviously because her hair is this sort of high ponytail with the hair kind of coming down as well. At the front you've got this little extra bit of hair here. And I've also put in the sort of psychic butterfly thing going on here on the face as well. So there's this line which dips in towards the eye, and then there's that line up here. So I don't know if I'll do those on a separate layer, but I'll have to think about that anyways as I'm going, because I'll have to do something with that, won't I? So yeah, if I do it as part of this, I'll have to do it pretty soon actually, because I'd have to have it over everything. Yeah, I'll probably have it over everything. Well, I'll think about that, but yeah. Now, one of the things which I mentioned I would have to adjust is the sword, because the handle is a little too long. Yeah, the handle's a little too long as compared to the length of the actual blade. So I think I need to make the handle a little shorter, maybe bring it down to about there, so that it's feasibly a two-hander still. So yeah, I really don't actually think there's a huge amount of stuff I need to really go over here. So the pose is fairly simple. I think it's a reasonably dynamic pose, of just having the sword come out slightly forward. Again, there's a tiny little bit of perspective here where the sword is slightly coming out towards you, hence why the top of the sword is a little bit bigger than the base here, and obviously the end of the handle is slightly smaller. We've also got stuff like the psychic effects, which I'll have to do a lot of. Yeah, I'll have to do that later. It's all color stuff of effects and all that stuff. So yeah, those bits are all things which I'll have to worry about later. Now, a thing that actually I have to think about is her eye color, because her eye color is remarkably inconsistent. Sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's purple, and I've made her eyes dark, so maybe I'll just have it be brown, because that might be just a little bit more suiting to what we've got going on here. Yeah, maybe that'd suit better to what we've got going on here, would be the brown. Because otherwise we're going to have a hell of a lot of purple going on here. The only real break is going to be the red of the sash, and then also on the hair tie, that's also red. I might actually do like a slightly, like a darker color here. I might make this two-tone, but who knows? Because I don't have to. So, since I don't have to, it would make my life a lot easier if I didn't make it two-tone. So, who knows? It might just behoove me to not do that, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Because, yeah, if I make the bodysuit two-tone, then I have to do it on the gloves and boots as well, which is a bit of a pain. Yeah, the weird thing would be that I'd have to make this part darker. The obvious thing that I would do would be the sides would be the darker part, and then... Or no, what I could do is... Yeah, no, I did intend on having like a bit of black or like a darker color in there. I'll do that of where I have like a darker purple or black, and I'll use this because there's this tiny side bit down here which I'd make the darker color, and then I'd do the lines would have the darker color, but not the actual, and then maybe the like bottom of the boot would maybe have it, the sole of the boot might have it, but the lines themselves would have the darker color, not either side of these things. Because just, yeah, that would be maybe along the back, is the idea that it has the darker part is along the back. Yeah. Yeah, I left this little note here of the angle that I originally did the psychic blade at, but I actually don't think I'll end up needing that because of how jaggedy it is. It doesn't really need... I don't really need to do any sort of tilt or anything to make this a straight line. Same with the sword. The sword is also... Well... Yeah, what's funny is that I used this same rotation for the sword. I'm just remembering that now, but realistically speaking, I don't actually think I'll need it that badly, because again, I have everything straight and in straight as it is now. I'm getting a bit tongue-tied today. I might maybe thin out the blade on the sword a tiny bit, as it is quite thick, and I don't necessarily think it needs to be. We'll see if I add any sort of glow or anything to the sword. I don't know if I will. I think maybe the sword will be normal and then just the glow on these bits. But yeah, all the effect stuff, that's stuff which I'll talk about later. Obviously, yeah, so I've gone over those little design changes, so the hair is the big one. There's the big one, because the bodysuit sort of changes in minor little ways every now and then, so it's not like a crazy redesign in that sense, but there's little elements which are different. Again, I just plucked the hair from the Ultimate Alliance 3 design, and yeah, so I'm just thinking now, is there anything else which I needed to go over? So I went over the posing, went over the design stuff. Yeah, see, a lot of the time I sort of really blast through the posing stuff because, yeah, like this is the thing, I just sort of injected some of those little bits of that I think that, yeah, just again, the way the camera sits is a little bit lower angle, so it has a little bit more of that dynamic look to it, where this part of the sword is a little bigger, this foot is, this leg is a lot bigger, this one's thinner, then it obviously goes up, and then the head is a little smaller versus these little things. Technically speaking, your head is actually bigger. So a thing that you can do if you want to make the shoulders seem a little smaller is you can make the head a little bigger. Which is a thing which, yeah, that'll make the shoulders seem a little slimmer. Because that was a problem which I was having, is that her shoulders were looking too big, if memory serves, whenever I was doing the base sketch. And again, I obviously have sort of things like the sash sort of flowing in the back, because it ties over here, which made it a bit of a pain, because I only realized that after I'd done all the basic stuff, after I'd drawn most of the rest of the character. I was like, oh wait, where does the sash tie? And it ties over here. So I was like, I probably should have done this the other way around. I probably should have flipped the character and then done the sash on that side, but what can you do? So I decided to have the sash still tie over there, and yeah, you can see that it sort of just loops back around behind her, and then it flows backwards like that. And again, the two different ties sort of flow in different ways. But yeah, I've already been rambling now for 10 minutes. I also decided to include just the end of the hair there. You can sort of see it. It's very minor, but yeah, it is still there. But yeah, anyways, I've been rambling for nearly 10 minutes, so I should, or nearly 11 minutes at this rate, so I should probably just carry on. So yeah, I will do these details and I'll be back to do the colours, at which point I'll have to explain a lot of my little bits of posing and stuff like, or my little bits of effects and things like that, because those will be covered there, because the effects are largely just in the sort of psychic effects. And yeah, that'll be stuff which is, yeah, later. Not really sure what I'll do with the background, but again, that's a colouring thing, so we'll sort that out later. Anyways, I'll move on. I'll carry on. Okay, so that is our details done. As I said, there's not a huge amount in terms of the problem stuff just yet. I sort of did. I did it in such a way of where I think it maybe may have taken made things take longer. where I sort of did everything in its most basic sense first, and then I went back and added in the details afterwards. So, for example, I did the shape of the bodysuit, and then I went back in and did all the details after that. So, technically speaking, that might have made things take longer. Same thing I did with the boots. I basically did the full leg undetailed, undetailed first. Then I went and added the boots and all this stuff, which isn't normally how I do it. I'd normally kind of do everything in bits of where I'd then detail it first and then carry on. So I feel like maybe that made things take a little longer than they otherwise would have. But yeah, I think that's probably fine. So long as I'm getting through stuff. So I tried my best to make the lines a little thinner on some of the sort of psychic energy and all that stuff, because I want that stuff to have a bit more of a glow to it. That's obviously what I'm going to be doing with it. I'll have a very subtle outer glow and some inner glow on it as well. So I think we're going to be going for a very pink color palette. I added a little bit more perspective going on with this, but I feel like it maybe looks a little weird. The end of that is so thin, and then the top of this is so thick. Maybe it looks a bit weird. Who knows? Not changing it now, I suppose. Yeah, what else was I going to mention? Yeah, as I said, we're going for a very pink color palette, I would say. Pink and purple is the sort of look that we're going for. So we're not getting that far away from blue, I guess, but we're getting far enough because we're largely using pinks. But yeah, so as I said with the effects and stuff like that, this will just be pretty simple inner glow and outer glow stuff. I'll have to put this over. Yeah, I'll have to do the pink pretty quickly. So what I'll do is I'll do the skin and the hair and everything. I'll do everything up here first, and then I'll do all those bits after that. But I'll have to put the sort of pink layer over everything so that I can get the glow to look proper. And then whenever I'm going through and doing my painted shading and my detailed shading later, I will obviously try and then re-emphasize this side as having the sort of pinkier bits on it, and then obviously I'll do the light line on this side, I would say. In terms of my background, I'm probably just going to have it be some sort of circular gradient, so like a pink in here, then out to a purple, something pretty simple, something not too crazy, but something which just has a bit of a gradient to it. There was a temptation to just make it a flat color, but I feel like if I make it a flat color, that will sort of make the more intense shading look a little weird, because that's probably what I'm going to be having here, is kind of intense shading. So that'll look a bit strange if I have it be a flat color. That won't really mesh all that well, so I'll have to do some sort of gradient with the background. So I'll do, yeah, like a circular gradient, I would say, a light pink out to a purple. Try and keep it still vivid. But yeah, I want it to be pink just so that some of this other stuff stands out a little bit more from there. Yeah, okay. Is there anything else I need to cover? Not really. I think honestly, because there's not a huge amount of colors. Oh, there's the weird stuff in the back of my head. There's not a lot of colors going on here, but each individual color obviously covers a little bit more space. So realistically speaking, this shouldn't take that long. I would say a lot of these bits probably won't take that long, because yeah, none of these colors take up a huge amount of space, and there's a lot of bits which I can sort of reuse. For example, silver. I'll use the same kind of core purple for the sword. The red of the sash is only going to be on the sash. I'll be able to reuse the black for other parts here. Yeah, I'll largely be able to reuse most of these colors over a few different places. So yeah, I would say I'm probably good to go. And yeah, these colors probably won't take too long. But yeah, once I'm done with these, I'll come back and I'll do the painted shading, and then yeah, we'll carry on. So yeah, anyways, I'll move on and I'll do these colors. So yeah. Alright, that was our colours done. That wasn't too difficult. I had to do a little bit of adjusting when it came to the purple, because in all the reference images that I'm looking at here, it's a bit more of a bluey tone. Now again, this is against a pink, so it's always going to look a little bit more purple, because you have to bear in mind the sort of colours that this is against, so whenever no, it's still pretty purple even there. But it is more blue toned than it was before, that much is certain. And obviously stuff like our painting and our shading and stuff like that is probably going to make it a little bit more blue toned. You know, I might even change it now, because I feel like that's still not quite right. So let's grab that and make it a little bit more blue toned. A little bit more blue toned. That looks a bit more right. Versus that. Yeah, that looks a little bit more correct. Because I think the actual tone of color, or the brightness of the color is what I need to say, is right. I just feel like, because I mean, it's still gonna look a little bit more purpley whenever it's against the pink. But yeah, I still think the brightness of the color is about right, but it was just, yeah, just not quite right in terms of, yeah, the actual tone. I feel like, yeah, the tone needed to be just that little bit more bluey. So right, our darker side is going to be here, and our lighter side is going to be here, so all this side is going to have a bit of a pinky kind of glow to it, and then this side is going to have more purple to it. So I have a color palette, which I'm going to need to reopen, because I just forgot about it. So right. Yeah. No, actually this is going to be very pink, because I feel like a lot of the purplier ones I've sort of used recently. So this pink one I think is what we're going to work with. Right, okay. Well, we'll see about that. I might make some adjustments to this color palette. Because it'll tone things to be very pink, because that will mean our darker color is going to be pink and our lighter color is going to be pink as well. So we'll see how I feel about that. Because, you know, what I might do is I might still have it be like pink and purple as the shading colors, but then we'll see what I do with the color palette for the gradient maps later, because I'll be making obviously the color palette really only factors in with the gradient maps towards the end, so that's the type of thing where it's like I don't really have to worry too much about it right now, but yeah, it's worth maybe keeping an eye on it, so that I'm not so that the gradient maps aren't doing like a whole bunch of color correction, that they're like completely altering the colors to be a different thing and all this stuff. So it's just the sort of thing where it's just a good idea to kind of have an idea of what you're doing before you kind of go having to do a whole bunch of work to fix it. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, this is the darker side, this is the lighter side. Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount I need to go over beforehand. The painted shading is pretty simple. I mean, it's always the same thing. So yeah, we're in the home stretch now. I don't think the painted shading or the detailed shading will take particularly long, because as I said before, there aren't actually many colors going on here. It's just that the colors that are here take up a larger amount of space. So in theory, this should actually be quick, because I don't have to go making a billion and one layers. So yeah. Anyways, I'll do this painted shading, and then I'll be back to do the detailed shading and the light line. So yeah, anyways, I'll continue. Alright, that's our painted shading done. So that was quick enough. Again, as I said, not many colors. They don't occupy, however, they do occupy some space. But you know, I can just use a bigger brush and then just kind of whack it out pretty quickly. But yeah, so right now it is time for the detailed shading, and I've got everything I need for this. I'm content to leave the background as just this gradient because the texture will sort of do enough work to make it look a little bit more interesting. Yeah, the texture at the end will sort of just help disperse out the gradient as we're going towards the end. So I'm doing a lot of hand movements to help me think because my brain is operating, I think, at about 15% capacity right now. So yeah, or 15% just efficiency in general. Anyways, yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount I need to go over. We're just going to be keeping this very purple, very pink, and yeah, is there anything else I really need to go over? I don't think so. I'm probably just going to use a white light line because that will stand out nicely from everything we've got going on currently. White light line will stand out enough from the rest of this because, yeah, white, because there's already so much pink going on that I think doing a pink light line would then just sort of get a little confusing, especially given that this is the most intense light is coming from the telekinetic fire, I suppose is what you could call it, or the telepathic fire. So yeah, I think I'm just good to continue. I think I'm just going to do this detailed shading and the light line, and then I'll be back to do the gradient maps and wrap up. So yeah, anyways, I'll carry on and then I'll be back. So yeah, anyways, I'll move on. Alright, that is our detailed shading, our lightning done. That didn't take too long. So, right, okay. Now it is time for these gradient maps. So I'm going to have a bit of a think about this because we're obviously going to be getting very, very pink, very pink with this. Okay. So our darkest color is this kind of pink. So this is a weird color palette. We'll see about this. Okay, so it definitely makes things pinker. Definitely makes things pinker. Right. Alright, let's see. What does this do? Oh, that's just changing the mask type. Okay. Right, so this is soft light versus normal. Soft light versus overlay. Okay, yeah, the overlay is definitely worse. Right. Okay, I'm gonna need to make some adjustments to this because this is looking too weird. Okay, so right now, let's still work with what we have here. Let's make that darker. Let's just keep them roughly in the same location. Let's just bring them down. I think that will work for us. Just keep them roughly the same tone, but just make them a little lower. Make them a little lower. A little lower. This one's probably fine. Yeah, that one's right at the very top. That one's probably fine. So now what does that look like in normal? Okay, in normal that's a little bit more washed out, but right, overlay, yeah. Okay. So this is a much softer color palette. Well, I mean, part of the reason why it was so washed out is because I turned it down to 60%. But right, let's turn that back up to 100% and see what it looks like in normal. Yeah, it's a bit washed out, but it's not as bizarre as it was before. We can probably leave it a little high. Leave it at about 70%. Right, I'm not going to need to tinker with that anymore. Right, let's make a duplicate of that, and let's make it a luminosity. That's interesting. The luminosity, I think, definitely worked better on this. Alright, we're not going to want it to be too intense though. Yeah, you know what, maybe 25%? Which is better? It's darker below. I think we want it to be a little lighter. Let's keep it high. Okay. Right, now we're going to want to color burn. This will make things a lot darker, so we don't want this to be 5%, I'd wager. Okay, this is actually a surprisingly normal color palette as things go. Right, now I'm going to need to grab my texture, and then we'll see how this looks. So yeah, overall this one was a fun one. I do like the pose. It's just, yeah, some of this coloring stuff has been a bit of a pain. The effects and everything, again, it wasn't a particularly hard one. That's the thing which I suppose is nice about it, is that, yeah, it wasn't particularly difficult, because some of these can be very difficult. The last one wasn't too bad either, I suppose, but yeah, I generally think the sort of the center aligned pose, which is still technically a full body shot, but because it's horizontal, it's smaller. That tends to be a little easier for me. I tend to prefer doing those a little bit. Right, I'm actually probably going to want to keep this, yeah, not too intense, because it'll affect the background pretty strongly. That's only on 10%. So yeah, it's already very visible on the background. We don't want it to be over the top, because it is sort of hitting our face a little bit strongly. No, actually, I think some of that might be the... yeah, some of that is... that's the luminosity. Partly the color. Yeah, so a thing which can happen with the paint brushes is because they are a set sort of shape that is... so the way that it works is it's some of them are technically like pattern brushes, in that they have a set pattern that overlays the page. So for example, whenever I were to do a brush stroke in that specific location, it was always going to look like that, more or less. I don't know the specifics of it, but I just use the tools. I don't fully understand them. So yeah, I think when it comes to that, it's sort of, you're going to get a little bit of those sort of kind of messier strokes along the face. Now again, the detailed shading just sort of masks some of that a little bit. That always helps. But yeah, you do end up with some of those just sort of less than ideal sort of shapes hitting the face sometimes. It's always the face that I try to avoid with these things sort of looking weird on, because the face is the last place you want them to look weird. Because yeah, if it's a little kind of odd looking on the face, it'll sort of just ruin the whole thing. But yeah, I don't think it ruins the whole thing. And I think there's a nice sort of lighting to everything here with the sort of very pink lighting. And thank God it actually looks a bit different than the last few. The last few I've had to try very, very hard to make them all look different, because they've all been blue. This one's pink, so at the very least it looks immediately distinctly different. But a lot of these have been very sort of monotonal color palettes that I've been going for. A lot of them have been very, very blue. In the last three, have all been very blue, apart from the one that was a little bit blue and a little bit pink. And then this one has been obviously very pink. It's mostly a fairly monotone color palette. Because yeah, there were a few there for a while which had really weird color palettes, which had like all over the place kind of color palettes. But yeah, this is, I suppose, what happens whenever I try to vary things up from the sunset color palettes, which I feel like I got very used to for a very long period of time, and it wasn't the most interesting to look at every single time whenever you're just seeing a sunset color palette every time. It doesn't make for the most interesting of color palettes whenever you're doing it constantly. So I sort of had to force myself to use some more interesting stuff, and then, well, here we are. So yeah. All in all, I think this was a fun one. I think it's a good pose. I think it all came out nicely. There's a nice little bit of perspective on it. There's the effects that sort of sell everything and make everything look a little bit nicer. But yeah, I think this one came out nicely. So I suppose I will say my outro and then I'll leave you. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. I think I covered everything: the posing, the effects, the perspective. I suppose what little there is of that. Again, I'm happy that I didn't really have to do much of a background this time, because I've had to do pretty. No, I don't want to say complicated, but more involved than not backgrounds the last few times. But But yeah, anyways, I'll do this outro. So if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking or not. I would of course prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so, you know, just do whatever it is that you'd normally do. Which may or may not include liking. As long as you don't do anything negative, I'm happy. It's the same deal if you want to subscribe. You know where the button is. You presumably watched a YouTube video before, so I don't need to tell you where it is. All I can do is politely suggest that you smash that like button. It may or may not influence your decision. Who knows? I don't pretend to understand such things. But yeah, if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment, politely worded, or just don't do it at all. If you're not going to do it politely, just don't do it. Keep it to yourself. And yeah. So, if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. I always forget that part. Yes, if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. And with all that said, that is us. So I will say goodbye, and I will leave you. So, bye-bye.